So we live in uncertain times. It would be easy to worry all day, every day. Perhaps you are in that situation. Or perhaps that's just one more thing to worry about. Here's the challenge. Our brains are built to protect us by looking around for all the possible threats to our well-being. The psychologist Rick Hanson, on whose work I'm drawing today, says it this way: our brain is like Velcro for negative experiences and Teflon for positive experiences. Even if there's lots of positive going on around us, we tend to notice the negative. By negative experience, I simply mean any experience that we take in as negative. And by positive, any experience that we take in as positive. It might be enjoying beauty or fun or the comfort of friends or a feeling of safety. It's all highly subjective, though there are some commonalities in what we are as human beings likely to perceive as positive or negative. Experiencing the negative, that is, having a negative experience, can itself be of enormous value to us. By noticing negative experiences, we notice threats. We notice unfairness and injustice. We notice what we may ourselves have done that we regret. Negative experience can be the foundation of change, both personal and social. And certainly many of us belong to ethical societies because we believe in change, both personal and social. So I'm not here to tell you that negative experiences should be denied, ignored, or negated. The problem is this: when we experience a lot of emotional pain around negative experience, we can lose our ability to act. I love this cartoon that is going around today with this person flat on the floor saying, and the person coming in says, "Are you okay?" And the other person on the floor says, "No, there are at least 5 national global events that break my heart each week, and it's only getting worse. Simple tasks are overwhelming. Existing feels like a chore. There is so much uncertainty in present and future, and I'm barely keeping it all together." When we have a lot of emotional pain around negative experiences, we can lose our ability to act. The more we notice negative experiences in comparison to positive experiences, the more pessimistic we can get about making change. The more we notice experiences that are negative more than we notice positive experiences, the more likely we are to lose hope and to despair. So to keep perspective, so that we can act to make changes by our own actions and in the world around us, we need also to experience the good. When we're experiencing our lives as more positive than negative, we are more likely to feel confidence, to feel strength, and to approach life with an open heart, really caring about other people. We are more likely to make the change that creates a world in which we can have more positive experiences. And yet this is a challenge. Our brains evolved with what the neuroscientists call a negative bias. We notice painful experiences more than we notice pleasant experiences. We can remember painful experiences more than we can remember pleasant experiences. We'd like to think that we can balance each bad experience with a good one. But one interesting research study, and it's been repeated in others, showed that in relationships, it takes 5 positive interactions to offset 1 negative interaction. One study suggested that 1 bad experience with a dog balances out about 1,000 positive experiences with a dog. Well, I think that 5 number is a good general rule: 5 positive experiences to balance 1 negative. People who are happier Oops, I'm on the wrong slide here. People who are happy are, research shows, more likely to help others, to behave in ways that others experience as positive to their well-being. Those who are happy are more likely to have the resources to handle the negative experiences that are inevitable in life. And this makes sense on a very primal, natural level. When we experience life more as something to be feared than enjoyed, we react out of our fear reactivity that's built into us. Those who are fearful tend not to see others as fully human, tend to see others as objects rather than people of infinite and beautiful worth. When we are in the grip of fear, our natural reactions are to do what? Fight, flight, or freeze. We lash out, we run away, or we just try to sink through a hole in the floor. Just when we want to act in the opposite direction, when our reason tells us in more calm moments that we are better off reacting not out of fear, but its opposite, whether we call that peace or happiness or reason or even love. It's worth remembering too that mentally and physically speaking, when we are in the grip of fear, the path in our brains that our thoughts take changes. The path that uses what we think of as our higher reasoning powers, our executive function in our brain, is actually turned off when we're in the grip of fear. Now, I say higher reasoning powers because our left brains can supply some good reasons for our actions when we're acting out of fear. As Benjamin Franklin once said, man is a reasonable animal. He can find a reason for anything. We'd rather, though, act, I think, out of our higher reason, our peaceful self, our compassionate self more often. And yet it is really hard to not act out of fear when we see threats in the world to human well-being and threats to those of others we love and value. So I'm going to ask you to do an experiment now where you are. First, I'd like you to remember whether you've ever been tired. So raise your hand if you've ever been tired. And you can just raise your hand in your window. Raise your hand if you've ever been tired. Yeah, most of us have been tired. Now try to remember what it's like to be deeply tired. Let your mind and body feel that tiredness from memory. Maybe even say out loud from that experience, I'm tired. Whew. Just feel that. Oof. And so now I'd like you to remember a time when you were rested. And raise your hand if you've ever been rested. I think most of us have been rested. So try to remember what it actually feels like to be fully rested. Let your mind and body feel that restedness from your memory. I'm rested. Even try saying it out loud. So how did it feel in your body when you remembered being tired and when you remembered being rested? Just think about that to yourself. So now I'd like for us to try shifting back and forth for a minute. Out of each sense of experience, say it after me. I'm tired. I'm rested. I'm tired. I'm rested. I'm tired. I'm rested. It's amazing how our brains can recreate those experiences for us, isn't it? But which was easier to do? For how many was it easier to be rested? For how many of it was it easier to remember and feel being tired? Yeah, our brains hold our memories, both positive and negative, and they come back into play as we are living our lives. Our explicit memories are those we can recall, but we also have implicit memories that live in our brains as neural networks and that help us feel our lives as having a certain texture. Implicit memories also have to do with body sensations. You know, that creepy crawly feeling you sometimes get when you begin to experience something negative, for instance, or that feeling of warmth when something positive is happening. If our implicit memories are mostly negative, life will tend to be experienced as negative, and we're more likely to act out of fear. If we have lots of implicit memories that are positive, we are more likely to handle challenges, to have hope. So we are more likely to remember the negative. Experiments have also shown that negative experiences tend to be recorded in our emotional memory immediately. Recorded immediately. And positive experiences take from 5 to 20 seconds to record in our emotional memory. Not at all immediately. So if we don't work at it, we're going to be much less likely to store those positive memories in a way that our brain remembers and that can help build our internal emotional climate. So the bad and the good news: fear and its opposite are both self-reinforcing systems. When we act mostly out of fear, we tend to create a universe where others also are fearful and act out of fear, and themselves tend to fight, flight, flee, or freeze, instead of engaging with us as fellow human beings. Finding ways to react not out of fear, but in ways that respect others as fully human and precious, that build relationships and human structures that promote well-being, that free us to draw on our higher reason, well, that's how we build a world in which fear is a less common fact and experience. That's the goal, I think, of the kind of ethics that we try to practice in ethical societies. So we need practices that help us react not out of fear, but out of respect and caring. One such practice helps us create that different internal emotional climate. We want to balance our negative experiences by deliberately taking in the good ones, especially at moments when we're not in the grip of fear or depression or an immediate negative experience. We want to use all of our wonderful complex brains to exercise the brain muscles of happiness, of positive experience, and to do that deliberately. Just as we need to exercise our bodies to learn new physical skills, we need to exercise our brains to learn new emotional skills. We may have brains that remember negative experiences perhaps 5 or more times as well as we remember positive ones. But we also have brains that can figure that out and that are able to compensate and make decisions to build up our ethical fitness. If we practice when we are not under immediate threat, then we are better able to respond in times of real threat. So taking in the good. That's an exercise developed by the psychologist I mentioned earlier, Rick Hanson, who has based this idea in neuroscience research. In the wake of some of the recent platforms on how awful the world is and on the delicate balance of hope and despair, I wanted to take this opportunity to share the idea and practice with others, to help us all build our ethical fitness through a rather simple exercise. Now, let's be honest. Many of us have learned that it's risky to enjoy something too much. It's actually a part of the old customs of much of traditional Europe to ignore and not mention good things on the assumption that you will jinx them happening again or attract bad experiences if you remember good ones. Or we have labeled enjoying good experiences as Pollyanna-ish or something like that. A waste of time. That's just positive thinking. So if that's true for you, I ask that you experiment anyway, just making a mental note of your discomfort and setting it aside for now, rather than setting up an internal argument in yourself. Just notice if you're telling yourself, that noticing the positive is somehow self-centered or dangerous or vain. Make a mental note of it, set it aside for the sake of today. So a bit of neuroscience background. We are going to take advantage in this of a basic principle of how our brains work. A researcher named Donald Hebb summarized it this way. And let me get the slide out. Neurons that fire together wire together. That is, if we practice something repeatedly, we're training our brain neurons to fire together and therefore to wire together and to take what is an awkward exercise and make it feel easier. The more we practice, the more we wire together the neurons we need to bring up the practice more easily. You know, we've known this since Hebb published his research, which was in 1949. So here is the simple 3-step exercise for taking in the good. I'm going to describe it much as Rick Hanson lays it out, and then guide you through an experience of it. It's something you can do anytime in about 30 seconds once you've got the steps clear. So step 1 is look for good facts and turn them into good experiences. So what does that mean? Often when something good happens, we take it as just a passing fact. Take eating a meal, for instance. Do you savor the flavors, the textures, and the smells? Or do you just eat, perhaps while distracted, watching videos on your phone or reading a paper while you're eating? An amazing number of people today eat while browsing on the computer or their phones. This step 1 is but about anything. Say you're at the mall and you see a child skipping along smiling. Do you notice that and smile and then go back to finding that item that you came into the store for? Or do you take a pause to really savor that experience, your joy in the child's joy? Or like when I asked you if you'd ever felt rested, and you might have remembered the moment as a positive fact, and then I asked you to turn that into an experience of mind and body. Most people are able to do this, although it sometimes is hard to learn. If you find yourself with distracting concerns or irritations when you try to do this, put them on hold for now. Just file them in a mental think about it later list. So for step 1, you're going to look at some good fact in your life, in the moment or recently or even long ago. What's one thing that you've noticed that you took in as a good fact, but basically just noticed? So I hope you have a good fact in mind. And so the action of step 1 is to turn that into experience. One good thing about human minds and brains, pretty much the same circuits fire when we remember something mentally as when we experience it in real time. We re-experience it. We did that with tiredness and restedness. We can do it with any negative or positive fact. So take that experience, that fact, and in your imagination, in your mind, in your body, experience it, not just think about it as an experience. So take a few seconds to try to experience or re-experience that positive fact. So then we come to step 2, really enjoy the experience. In step 2, mentally imagine that experience, and then really let yourself emotionally experience the goodness of it, the fun, the joy, the calm, the peace, the satisfaction, whatever. Let your mind and body and emotions fill up with the experience, really feel it. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to do that. Okay. So Martin Luther King Jr. once wrote, occasionally in life, there are those moments of unutterable fulfillment which cannot be completely explained by those symbols called words. Their meanings can only be articulated by the inaudible language of the heart. Step 2 is about creating more of that sense of fulfillment. So we're practicing how to get to that state beyond just the words describing the fact to the experience itself. So that was step 2, to really experience it. And then step 3 is to intend and sense that the good experience is sinking into you. Now, how you do this will perhaps be different for you than for me. I like to imagine it really spreading from my brain where I'm thinking about it through the rest of my body and then filling my body until it comes out the pores of my skin everywhere. Other people like to imagine it as warmth from the outside, bathing their body in that warmth. Some find it helpful to imagine a neural network being built and stored in the brain's memory. So now with that same experience, with intention, let that good experience really sink into you and sense it as it sinks in. Whew, I hope it's coming out through your pores or however you're imagining it. So to review the simple 3 steps, step 1 is we look for good facts and turn them into good experience. Step 2 is we really enjoy the experience. And step 3 is we intend and sense that the good experience is sinking into you. And how long does this take? It takes about 20 seconds to 45 seconds total. And that's usually all the time it takes for your brain to get the positive feelings stored up as fuel for your ethical fitness. And how often should you be doing this? A few times a day will be helpful. Learning to do it when you first notice the positive fact will help a lot. Just before going to sleep at night is a time when the potential for learning is especially high. So practicing this just before sleep can be especially powerful. And that's the simplest version of this practice. 3 steps: turn a positive fact into an experience, really enjoy the experience, and intend and sense it sinking in. So let's practice it with something else. Think of something else good that you experienced in the last couple of weeks. It doesn't have to be major, just something you consider good. In your mind, remember it as an experience. Remember some sounds, some sights, some smells, some tastes, some touch. And now let yourself enjoy that experience that you're remembering. And now imagine yourself taking that good feeling of enjoyment into your whole body, however that works for you. Let it really sink into you. So that's how it works. And it does get easier the more times that you practice it. I am going to just mention that as you practice over time and this becomes easier, you can add a 4th step that helps with getting neurons to fire together and therefore wire together. So step 4 is advanced. And what that would look like is, while you are sensing that good, you might find it useful to imagine the good feelings filling up an old wounded place in your memory. And imagine those good feelings replacing some older bad feelings. Step 4 is lightly pairing the good feeling with some remembered bad feelings. And then, because you've taught your neurons to fire together and therefore wire together, when you remember the old negativity, you will also remember the positivity. So when you do this, you want to be dimly aware of that other feeling, not bring it totally to the forward, but bring the current experience of the good to the forefront of your attention at the same time. That pairing, now I just lost my place. Hold on. It just take me a minute, but you can think of one of those good experiences while I'm finding my place. So one of the objectives that we're trying to do is add to our memories about 5 implicit memories for every implicit memory that's negative. And once you get to that advanced step 4, to begin lightly connecting some of those bad memories to some better times and better memories. One of the ways that I practice this is, and of course I haven't gone to grocery stores that much since 2020, but standing in line at a grocery store is a really good time to bring up a good memory and to really spend your moments enjoying it. It kind of makes up for having to spend the time waiting in line, which you could make into a negative experience if you allowed that to happen. So when you get to the advanced part, the idea is pairing old negativity lightly held with, or even a current negativity like standing in line at the grocery store, gets those neurons to fire together, and it can have a powerful effect on your internal climate. This can really help change your reactivity patterns that those old memories might tend to bring you to. Of course, if the old memories are major traumatic memories, you will want to have some professional help with the process of dealing with them. So what are some positive facts that you might want to consider practicing on? If it's harder for you to focus on the positive, you might need some reminders and some ideas. First, of course, are those in-the-moment events that you might think of in the moment as good experiences to take in. And if you want to jot down some notes to remember later some of these other ideas, feel free to do that. So one might be, what's something good about where you live? Even the fact that you have a roof over your head, that you have a working elevator now in your building, that you live near some stores you need to get to. These can be facts to turn into experiences via memory. Enjoy them rather than just noticing them, or even not noticing them, and then let the experience really sink in. Remember, as you're doing this mentally, to set aside judgmental and negative thoughts that might also come up. The practice is to experience the good. If you find yourself turning to negativity, just remind yourself, oh, that's how my brain works. I'm human. My brain wants me to be sure to remember the negatives, and mentally put that thought up on a shelf to retrieve later, and then turn back to finding something good to practice on. So another idea, what's something good inside where you live? Do you have some books that you enjoy, some art, some furniture that's comfortable, a fireplace you like, a refrigerator to keep food from spoiling? There are lots of things inside where you live that you might pick as a positive fact to really mentally and emotionally experience and enjoy. Or how about what's good about the people you live with or near? Is there someone who always smiles at you or who helps you sometimes? What's good about your friends and family? Or what's a good fact about the work you do? And I'm including here not only work you do for a paycheck, if any, but work that you do without being paid for it. What's good about it? And then how about what's good about you? Oh, this is hard to do for those of us brought up never to brag. But what skills do you have? What character traits do you have that you enjoy? What's a time that you were strong or resilient? Perhaps you're good at baking or writing or fixing faucets or tending a garden. Perhaps you're generous with others or patient or good at figuring out a solution to a tricky problem. Perhaps you enjoy figuring out what's true and what's not. Perhaps you stood up in the face of fear and asserted yourself. Again, if judgments come up, yeah, but that's not enough. Just set them aside. Focus on the good and let it really sink in. What's good about you? Felix Adler grounded his idea of the worth of every human being in the experience each of us has of feeling worth. Was there a time today that you felt that worth in yourself, or recently, or ever? Use that as your positive fact to experience, savor, and really take in. And if Adler was right in his guess, that experience of your own worth will help you to see it in others more readily too. Or what's a place or a situation or a person where you feel especially safe? What happened this week that you're grateful for, that you appreciate? Sometimes we rush right away to giving thanks, partly to be polite, but we don't experience the positive. What this practice is about is not actually the same as the practice of gratitude. That's another activity or practice that can also contribute to well-being. Perhaps when you're grateful, take some time as well to really experience the experience for which you're grateful before expressing the gratitude. You very well may find that your expression of gratitude is more genuine, deeper, and more appreciated if you've taken the time to really take in the appreciation. Or how about when and where or with whom do you feel liked, appreciated, included? Where do you experience kindness, a sense of belonging, a sense of community? Where do you feel goodwill from another, even if it's not expressed explicitly? Was there a time you really contributed to the well-being of another, to their sense perhaps of worthiness, of accomplishment? And so I invite you to try this for a few weeks. One try at it won't make a very big difference in your attitude or internal climate, won't really wire the neurons together, but a few weeks of practice will likely have significant effects. And you'll likely just enjoy the experience itself. What a wonderful ethical duty to have, to go forth and enjoy yourself more often and for longer periods of time. So we're going to say goodbye now to those watching on video and invite you to come and join us live on some Sunday. You can find out more about us at rysec.org.